Hi all, this is Skate, and I haven't done a video in over a week. A week? It feels like ages since I've done a video, and I actually missed doing them, but it's been an absolutely manic week. The last video I uploaded was the announcement for the charity livestream, and we as a community have already raised £1,199 at the point of me making this video. That is amazing for a week. So massive respect and massive hats off to you guys. Remember, it all goes direct to the charity. I never see any of it, just in case anyone was worried about that. When you give on a Just Giving page, it goes directly to them. But we'll talk about that in another video. On to this video. Now, I decided to do the WZ-120 because I started doing videos on this line and stopped because I kind of didn't have time to finish my grind. But I managed to squeeze in a bit of time here and there to finish my grind. And I've waited for all the tanks on this line till my grind on that actual tank is finished. And the reason for that being very simply so I can give my honest verdict on the tank after playing it for a large number of battles. I can also try and give as much information as I can as to how I personally like to play this tank. And with that in mind, I've lined up 3 replays which show 3 different playstyles, so to speak, on the tank. The second one is predominantly second line tank. This one there's a lot of head on in it, and in the last one there's as much flanking as I can. But we will talk about those as we roll through the replays. Let's talk about the actual tank first. Now, you've got a choice of gun. You've got the 100mm. Oh, I've got a comment on this AMX. He was hugging my tank for a large duration of this battle. I mean, he spent a lot of time attached to the side of my tank. And it annoyed me at some parts of this battle, because I would line myself up in a good position and he'd just roll directly in front of me, or onto the side of me, or try and overtake me. So I thought, ah, great, this guy's going to be the death of me. Turned out he was actually a very helpful team player, as the game will progress and show. Anyway, back onto the WZ-120. You got a choice of 2 guns, really. You can either use the 100mm, or you can use this 122mm. My honest opinion on this is very, very simple. It's all about the 122mm. If you're using the 100mm, it just feels like a disappointing, lackluster T54. I mean, just go on something like Tank Compare and compare up the T54 with the 100, any of its 100mm for that matter, and compare it up against this tank with the 100mm. This thing can't hit anything on the move. In fact, it has exactly double the gun dispersion on the move that the T54 does, and that's bad. I mean, like, you're looking 0.11 gun dispersion on the move, or turret rotation, compared to 0.22. That's quite a staggering amount. And it makes all the difference when you're trying to fly by something and make a shot count. So as a personal thing, I wouldn't use the 100mm, even if you came up against a T54. It's just gonna toy with you, because it's better with the 100mm in every sense of the word. I mean, this thing has 20mm more turret armor than a T54, but 20mm less on the hull. The turret on both of these is fantastic, this and the T54. Aside from that, T54 wins in every category. It's got better mobility, it's got more brake horsepower, so it's got a better power to weight ratio. You could argue this has better penetration, but yeah, we're talking 1mm. Aside from that, if you're using the 100mm, it's just a subpar T54, which looks pretty. So it's all about the 122mm. Now, it's this 122mm which sets it apart. Now, firing off this 122, you do need to be stationary, otherwise you've got that horrible accuracy to try and contend with. But when you're stationary, less than a second to be fully aimed in, that's fantastic. So it's that part about the tank which is amazing. Also, you've got much more usable, much more workable HE on a 122mm than you do on a 100mm, so that comes into consideration as well. Now, the obvious drawback, potentially, of that is a longer reload. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you can get yourself in a peek-a-boom situation versus other mediums, or you can give yourself some form of cover between your reloads, you're going to make a mess of other medium tanks, especially something like a Leo PTA, where you can use that HE to your advantage. Or against Borsigs, or even just low health, hit point tanks. You can just aim in quickly and shoot a HE, and finish them off, much more reliably than you would with a 100mm. So it all sounds like it's all in favour of the 122, right? Yep. No, absolutely not. And this is what I really am disappointed with about this tank. With the 122, I really like the tank, except one thing. Well, actually, technically, 3 things. I hate its 3 degrees of gun depression with this gun. 3! What are you meant to do with 3 degrees of gun depression? That massively limits where you can go and what you can do. And it also makes it really frustrating when you go over a pebble and your gun goes flying up in the air. Hell, you can go over the next door neighbour's cat, and it would be enough to raise the elevation of this gun through the roof. It's really annoying. 3 damn degrees of gun depression. Aside from that one thing, I actually like the tank. I think it looks fantastic, and I enjoy the 122mm. And I had a ping spike here, by the way. It's not me just being an idiot. I promise, you can't see. Everyone's going, yeah, sure, Skate. No, genuinely, I had a ping spike there. But yeah, it's these 3 degrees of gun depression. I mean, come on. Give it some more. I mean, look how much we reversed, and that's it. We are out of being able to shoot at a lower plate on that tank on the opposite ridge. The gun depression, 3 degrees, is ridiculously... Look at that! I'm laughing, but it's not funny. It's the only thing I despise about this tank. Aside from that, some people would go, oh yeah, you got way less DPM. Honestly, it doesn't bother me. You've got a fantastic 122mm. I nearly said 121 then, but it's a 122. I think I'm thinking the WZ-121. Anyway, it's irrelevant. It's just those 3 degrees, and they will make the tank awkward. If you haven't played this tank yet, prepare yourself for that. If you have played the tank, you will know exactly what I mean, and you will probably be just as frustrated about it. So there's your catch. You drive a 100mm gun on this, and you are just a subpar T-54. You drive the 122, and you start to make this tank sing, and you start to find what's magical about the tank, until you hit something very small on the terrain, and it goes whoop up in the air. Now, Wargaming buffed this thing not too long ago. I don't think they needed to buff the things they did. They just needed to give it a smidge more gun depression. I'm not talking about, like, yeah, give it 10, I'll be happy. It's got 3 degrees. I'm talking like, give it 5 degrees. At least then it will still be limiting, but also still workable. In more positions, at least. Now, we don't want every tank to be the same. That would be ridiculously boring. That's why it's nice this thing's got the 122mm on it. But... yeah, just come on, give it 5, please. On the off chance someone from Wargaming is watching this, please. Because I do like these tanks. It's like when you get up to the 121. It's got 6 degrees of gun depression. That's double the gun depression this thing does. Ah, look at that. In case you missed it, that was my max roll. And I used HE, and I did a grand total of 2 to the top of the lever. But yeah, you'll notice in this one, I'm focusing more on trying to play that support role. Trying to put this big old nasty gun to use to help my team. And it's not like I've just sat at the back. I have spotted targets from where I am. And we're raining those 122 shells down and being of use in terms of support to our team buddies. Now, however, I'm going chasing a T-54 lightweight. I'm going to put 1 AP round into him, track him, which gives me that little bit more time to get close to him. And now we're going to switch to the HE, because HE in theory means big nasty shots into the back, and that wasn't too dissimilar to the AP shell I put into him. But you can get nice rolls, especially if you're firing at something, even a grill, something lightly armoured, when you have your max HE roll. It surprises people when you do a huge amount of damage to them. You could see again how limiting that gun depression was then. We looked like we were on the flat and we just couldn't get the gun down. It's annoying, it's frustrating, and that's the biggest drawback to this tank you really need to prepare yourself for. And it's a medium tank, so you want to be rolling around in it because that's your natural habitat. You're in a medium tank, you want to push that flank, you want to work your way around. And you do that, you see something, you naturally in a medium tank want to go and fire on the move. And with your 0.22, you're going to miss if you fire on the move. And then, if you don't miss, because of that, you'll probably miss because you hit something ever so small on the floor, which made your gun fly up in the air. Because logic. Aside from those two things, I do enjoy the tank. However, it's hard to ignore those two things. Because for me, even when I thought, hey, I'm getting used to this 3 degrees of gun depression, it would find a way to catch me out. Now, there are things you can do to limit this. You can reverse up ridges, you can reverse into rocks, things like that. And that will help you. That'll help you massively in terms of trying to gain some extra gun depression. As we know though, that's not always feasible, not always possible. But it's trying to find those positions if you need them. In terms of trying to find positions in general for this tank, what I try to do personally is not brawl unless I know I am guaranteed to win the brawl. Because you've got less DPM than most other medium tanks you will come up against. In fact, probably all. The one thing you've got going for you is purely just your alpha, and that alpha combined with that mobility allows you to do some pretty naughty things if you can get cover between your shots. And if you can do that, you're going to probably fare off a lot better, especially if something's trying to put a 300 or 310 alpha shot into you and you're returning one in exchange for 400. That's where you make this tank shine, and that's the part I really enjoy about it. We are talking about 122mm on a mobile medium tank. That's this thing, that's its forte, that's what it's built for, is this gun. So with all those things said and done, the only way to fare better is by, quite simply, making sure you're trying to trade 1 for 1, and if you can trade 1 for 1, you will come off better. But that means not brawling face to face, because they're obviously going to reload quicker than you, and they're going to use that DPM advantage to you. This sort of position I'm in here is absolutely perfect for the tank. There's a flat ridge in front of me, which allows me to hide as much as my tank as I can, except for my hull, which means my gun depression isn't really a serious issue there, and I appear when I am ready. I appear when my gun is loaded, not when his gun is reloaded. So anyone I come up against here, their rate of fire at this point in time is useless. It doesn't give them any advantage in any shape or form. But of course, that is entirely dependent on how long I stay in this position, which I don't really have a choice. We're losing, I have to go in, I have to try and do as much as I can. And shots like that don't penetrate, don't really help me. It's so frustrating sometimes. And again, if I just let that shot fully aim in, it would have been fantastic. And in fact, I think if I was in a T-54, I would have made that shot on him. So, I need to try and get in close, and I need to deal with this T-54 as quick as I can, so I can try and help my team around the other side. As I say that, however, I just lost my last team buddy, so it's me versus 4 at this point. Now, if I had more time, I wouldn't be putting my tank in this scenario where the T-54 could potentially use his DPM against me. This is a stupid thing to do. I reversed out hoping I could just trade one shot and hit him with a HE. I missed the fire button. So, my only alternative at this point in time is to leg it, shoot a HE into the floor in front of him, point my gun at him, hopefully I could hit him. I'm going to take another one from him, but this time he hits my track, turns me round, thank you, my armor is now facing him, so when he comes up this time, I can actually aim a little bit better and finish him off with a HE. And one thing I already mentioned earlier is this position right by here is very strong for my tank, so I'm going to go back to it, and hopefully people are going to come running around the corner and try and deal with me. My problem at this point in time is my gun is bust. So my aim time, my accuracy is absolutely appalling. But I'm hoping they're going to rush me because, well, 3 of them, 1 of me. Tend to find that's what people do in this circumstance. So that's something you can try and use to your advantage. IS-5 though, I'm going to use a heat shell so I can actually try and guarantee that shot into the front of him. Just clip the front of him, which now allows me to deal in a 1 versus 2 scenario. Now I'm dealing with a tier 8 tank destroyer and a tier 9 heavy tank. And there's one thing I've got in my favour here, and that's my view range. And remember, I have usable HE, so I can reset that cap very easy, you would think, wait for it, with the HE. Except my gun depression limits me and frustrates the hell out of me, and even when I'm using HE, I don't do any damage. How annoying is that? I mean, my team at this point in the game are actually crying at me to use HE, and I'm like, yeah, I am. But it's going to do no damage to the front of this guy. I mean, I hit, I didn't do any damage, and they're just thinking I'm firing heat or something. I'm not. I'm firing HE to try and just reset the cap. And you can see them in chat. They're going, HE? Why isn't this guy firing HE? And at this point in time, I'm sitting there going, oh, for the love of God, I am as 2 HE shots which have done 0 damage. So they're probably thinking I'm an idiot. My missus would probably agree, but this time we're going to get the track better than the front of the turret. So 2 HE shots bounced on the E75, or splashed and didn't do any damage. So we eventually reset the cap counter, and by resetting it with so little time left, makes them basically come running towards me. And I need to use this to my advantage. I'm going to use a heat now, which does set him on fire and gives me 422 damage. They have no choice but to try and rush me at this point if they want to win. I'm going to try and stay out here because, well, very simple. I want to try and hide my hull as much as I can. I do sacrifice a big chunk of hit points there, which leaves me on a 1 shot, a 1 tap, or even just HE in my general direction. But he doesn't have the gun depression there, and I do manage to put another filthy heat straight into his lower plate. So it's just me as a 1 shot versus a pretty healthy AT-15. Now, I don't want to expose my hull because I'm an easy penetration at that point. Note how I'm trying to use the ridge on my left to elevate and help me with the gun depression while only trying to expose my turret. And I think that's the key trick with this tank, is basically just hiding everything except for the turret. But of course, that means trying to juggle the gun depression at the same time. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. There is 20 seconds left on the clock. I don't want to lose, but I don't want to draw. We put 1 into his track accidentally. I was aiming for the front of his tank straight through the gun. We're going to put 1 more into the track. Now I know he's used his repair kit. And now I'm going to get around the back of him. Remember, my average roll is 400 damage. He's only just above that. We put 1 into him for 380. Which means it's a draw. We did 5,126 damage. We had 5 kills. We missed out on the last kill. That means we just missed out on a 1 versus 4 Kolobanov's medal. And the reason I picked this replay is I think it sums up the tank best. Purely because it was a disappointing end, wasn't it? That's kind of how I felt leaving the WZ-120. It was I really liked that tank. I enjoyed playing that tank. Oh no, wait, 3 degrees gun depression. God damn, that tank is great, but so annoying. So if I personally could do anything to that tank, I'd just give it 2 degrees of gun depression and drop back its rate of fire in exchange to what it was before they buffed it even. It just needs that teeny bit more gun depression. If it wasn't for that, I think this tank would be bloody lovely. But it's not, because of that one thing. No, because of that 3 things. So yeah, WZ-120, it's a good tank. It just has 3 problems. But that's it for this video. I hope you have pulled out something useful from in between my rambles. Either way, hope you have enjoyed the rambles. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.